In August of 2019, I went to my first Robot Combat event, where I went out pretty early in the bracket, but had some fun with grudge matches afterwards. In August of 2021, I have made it to another tournament, bringing with me upgraded versions of the same two bots. I'm Caden here with Kepler Electronics, and let's get into it. I made it to the Twin Cities Robotics event in Eagan, Minnesota, bringing along Stomp Bot, my 1-pound guitar pedal wedge, and Blastwave 2, my 1-pound synthwave-ish drum spinner, both of which have videos on the channel detailing their build processes. Blastwave alone was supposed to go to the first event held by this group, but due to an extremely cramped electronics layout, had to drop out. In the month between that event and this one, I swapped over to the Malinky Nano ESC from the Bristol Bot Builders Dual ESC and Lemon RX to save space, and was able to get things working properly. Brian from Team Buttspots, who built Steamed Hams, did offer to machine these spacers, which I had designed and was unable to make on my tools, and these came out wonderfully, and I can't thank him enough. So Blastwave had a couple minor changes, but Stomp Bot had basically no changes from the build video, and was able to get going pretty easily. Now, before I get into it, there are a couple things that are important to know about the event. The first is that things were pretty crazy. Blastwave broke on the way down to the event, which I'll talk about in a minute. And due to this craziness, I didn't really get to talk to basically anyone or take pictures of their bots. So I'll be referring to the bots themselves rather than their teams and drivers, as I basically sat at my pit table and tried to get things charged up and motors replaced in time for my next fight. The next thing is that things were incredibly sunny and hot, so there is a fair amount of glare on the Lexan during the match videos, but it shouldn't interfere with the action too much. Speaking of the heat, what's up with Blastwave breaking on the way down? Well, when I went to test it, it refused to spin up, which I guess means that it wasn't going to pass safety. I oiled the belt, checked the tightness of the axle screw, but couldn't see anything. So I swapped Blastwave over into one of my spare chassis, which worked. I guess that the chassis melted slightly in the car, and the supports were pushing into Blastwave's drum, impeding the already difficult spin up. In other news, I also forgot all of my spare chassis inside of my storage box, in the sun, and they all melted, even more than this first one, so that's a lot of the reason that I'm blaming the heat for the initial issues. Maybe I'll pack things in a cooler for next time. Either way, Blastwave passed safety with 2 minutes to spare because it was in the first match of the day, fighting Trash the Dragon. Now, Trash the Dragon was one of the bots that I wanted to fight with Blastwave the most, as it was a kit version of Lobotomy, a bot I lost to at Kilobots in basically a one-hit KO. So let's watch the kinda rematch.
Alright, everyone ready?
Yes.
Yep. 3, 2, 1, go! Come on. Oh! Yeah. Oh, no. Slow it down and spin it back up. Good. You can tap out if you want.
Oh, the 2 wheels are gone now.
20 seconds in pit.
Just take a shot already.
Alright, 10 seconds and then the pit's open.
Gremlins.
Gremlins! No! 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Blastwave wins by technical KO.
So to summarize, I didn't tap out and ended up winning because I could still kinda drive. I do feel a bit bad for calling for him to hit me again, as I thought that he was just being nice and holding back. I really wanted to get some nasty hits on Blastwave, which we may or may not get later. Either way, that's Blastwave's first win by knockout, and which had nothing to do with its ability to drive or to dish out damage. Driving was not Blastwave's strong suit, and we'll see how that plays out during the rest of the tournament. Apparently Trash the Dragon's issues were fixed later in the day, so here's hoping a full-strength Blastwave meets a full-strength Trash at a future event to get a more even matchup. Stomp Bot's first match was next, up against Crixus, a nasty drum spinner that I probably should have been a bit more scared of. Let's see how things turned out.
Alright. 3, 2, 1.
Begin. Oh, look at that. Looks like we got somebody else sending out hiking. Stomp Bot and Crixus are brawling it out. Let's see. Oh, look at that. Crixus is going crazy. As you can see, he's taking this head on. It seems like Stomp Bot's the one getting stomped after all. Try to keep our rings in one piece, please.
So Stomp was running its fastest motors, which made it pretty hard to control, leading to a lot of bad moves, flipping over and such, and I ended up swapping over to the slower ones after this. I hadn't had to crab walk Stomp before, but I was still totally able to maneuver it into place, and was able to luckily toss Crixus into the pit. That was a really close fight, but Stomp took its first win of the day. I'm not 100% sure of why the motor died. I didn't think to note it down during the event, but if I remember correctly, I think that one of the power leads popped off. Up next was Stomp again, this time against One and Done, a 3D printed vertical spinner.
3, 2, 1, go. Oh, that was a good hit. Can you drive? Okay. Well, you lived up to your name.
So I kinda got a box rush and then decided that's really not what I wanted to do, and instead let them spin up fully, because I was really just curious as to what it could do. And when I hit it, the arm broke off and they tapped out. They did take this pretty nice gash out of the wedge, and since I didn't bring any grinding supplies, I swapped over to the blue wedge, which looked a bit uglier as it wasn't really sized for this chassis, but still ran along the ground perfectly well. But back over to Blastwave, whose next match was against Little Twisty, the other drum spinner from Crixus' team. Let's see how that went.
Oh my! Oh!
They knocked my lids off, and then the fight was called on fear of a lipo fire. Not the first time it's happened to Blastwave, and I'm really sure it won't be the last. But speak of the Twisty, as Stomp's next fight was against them.
3, 2, 1, go!
It's gonna open, Caden. Get out of the way. This bit's gonna open. There you go.
I think we can call that revenge for what Stomp did against Crixus. This was also the match where I really started to understand Stomp, and had that match gone to the judges, I think I probably could have taken it on control and aggression, what with all the rams and pins. I had asked my dad to film this match, and you can actually hear him telling me to stick away from the pit, which I did, going so far as the other side of the arena, but it didn't matter in the end. And with that, both Stomp and Blastwave were in the losers bracket, which meant that they still had at least one fight apiece left. Stomp's next fight was against Pushy Girl, a dual-sided invertible tracked wedge, so it was a full-on pushing battle.
3, 2, 1, fight! Shoving match of the century. Here's 10.
Hitting 30.
Couple of good pins by Stomp Bot.
Hitting 15. Hitting 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The pit is open.
Ooh, the stakes are up.
Oh! Oh, get out of the way.
That's in 30.
Oh.
Hit looking good.
Okay, match in 10,
Oh.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Stomp Bot.
I was lower than them, which meant that as long as I took things slowly, I was perfectly safe to take them head on. I don't have a ton of guiding power, so I couldn't actually guide them over to the pit, and I decided to just keep getting short pins to rack up control and aggression points. But in the end, they ended up driving too close to the pit, and Stomp moved on. The next match was also with Stomp Bot, this time against Jolly Rat, a bot which had some wheel issues going in, but after some tape, they were ready to go.
Moving now! Yes.
Ready to go, both robots are ready.
Yes.
Timer ready.
Timer ready.
All right, we will start in 3, 2, 1, go!
Can you grab my phone?
Look.
Do we have it stuck?
You have it stuck.
Oh, really?
All right, pause.
Broom. Yes.
The broom's under you.
I've got the broom.
Yeah, we're getting the broom. Or unless you guys are just gonna do it by hand.
Just got it by hand. I wouldn't got the broom. Awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
We're zooming in 3, 2, 1. Or maybe not. Okay. Hit in 30.
Wham. Hit him.
Hit open in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The pit is open.
Hey, it opened. Come on, go.
Yeah, we did some adjusting.
All right. Come on. Deliver. Drive. This is stuck? Push. Freaky fast delivery to the pit.
Yeah, he's a bit random.
This is a stuck. I think so.
Pause.
Okay, this is going to be broom. And the third unstick, you get a hit at once with the broom. Thank you, sir.
Crowd's not very happy
All right.
now because he's been
All right, resuming in 3, 2, 1. Match in 30.
Oh, push him into the pit. You a judge? All right, who's that?
Match in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That is match.
After an unstick, things went decently well until one of my motors went out. They were lower than me, and as they propped me up in my bad wheel, they were unable to move, and so was I, leading to another unstick. And even though I had to crab, I was still able to get under them from the side a couple of times, which was nice. And even though they had me pinned at the very end, I think my motor kicked back into gear and was able to push them away. Even though it would end with both of us being stuck in each other and the match would go to the judges, where Stomp would win this very, very close fight and would go on to face Theseus, the scariest horizontal in the competition. But not right now, as Blastwave was up next, fighting Pronghorn, a walking drum spinner from the same team behind Jolly Rat. I went into this fight down a wheel, as all of my spare gearboxes had eaten some metal. And so I was left with only 3 gearboxes that were still working. And also no drum, as that had been broken for a while at this point. So I was mostly going in to get destroyed and to hopefully get some useful data on the strength of the PLA frame I was running, which hadn't been swapped out, partly due to curiosity and partly due to... But it was now time for Pronghorn to use its weight bonus to blast Blastwave into the ceiling.
3, 2, 1, battle! Business end.
Drum's not gonna work? No. Oh.
Oh dang, both lids.
Did that kill you?
I guess I'm high-centered, so yeah.
Control movement there.
Strike him down. Do it.
And strike him down I was. Both lids came off this time due to the disintegration of the screw supports, leading to both a high center and also another battery damage chance.
Oh, we got batteries explode.
And with that, Blastwave was out of the competition. I'll go over some of the lessons I learned later, but right now it's time for Stomp Bot to face Theseus, to face the kind of bot that I designed the new wedges around, the kind that I wanted to face to prove just how durable Stomp Bot was.
3, 2, 1, battle!
And after an unstick that took some serious tools and leverage,
In 3, 2, 1, go!
and after another unstick because the two bots were doing their best robot pyramid impression.
Put them down again.
Okay, resuming in 3, 2, 1, go!
We do not have control movement. Oh yeah. He's still moving. Stop bot. Give me a count of 10.
Yeah, well, match ends in
In the end, Stomp somehow was not counted out. I guess because Theseus kept ramming me, but the winner was obviously Theseus. It was the one that didn't have its wheels turn into enough pieces to fill a beach. They did almost fall into the pit a few times, just barely skimming around the rim like every basketball I throw towards the hoop. And so Stomp Bot was out. One of the wheels was almost completely gone and the other was dangling by a thread. The wedge did its job, though I think the steeper slopes on this one led to these deeper gashes on the corners rather than forcing the blade to ride up nicely. But I'm still really amazed at how well the bot managed to hold it together. I did manage to throw some spare electronics into another chassis for a grudge match. That's probably an incorrect term. Let's call it an execution. As Stomp would be facing Captain Generic, a beetle that fought at Norwalk Havoc, and whose builder had brought along for a bit of fun in case anyone wanted to fight it. I had thought about entering all 3 stomps as a beetle at one point, so getting hit by one would be a great test. There's very little lead up to this fight, so I'll just give you a countdown. 3, 2, 1, fight. And that's the fight. Stomp's case was breached, hilariously pulling not the battery from the switch and connector, but the connector and switch from the battery. Here's the battery lead here, and here is the switch and connector. So, Stomp won't be entering a beetle arena anytime soon. Gotcha. And that's all the fights I had, but let's talk about the lessons I actually learned from this. For Blastwave, the first thing is to not store the chassis in the sun, and also to probably store them in a cooler for the next summer event. Also, I'm done with the N20 motor and gearbox combo. They constantly break, are a pain to solder to, and aren't appreciably cheaper than competition. I broke at least 5 motors during this tournament, whereas Stomp, whose motors admittedly do cost twice as much and weigh 4 times as much, only lost 2 gearboxes, and those had undergone a fair few fights, rather than failing and forcing me to crab walk in my first match. I'd rather give up the extra weight rather than waste a ton of money on motors that, if they aren't dead on arrival, will be dead pretty soon. The next thing is that the chassis needs to be bigger. The bot still had about 25% of its weight allowance untouched, and I knew that going in, but I was never actually able to do anything, as all the obvious ways to increase the weight came with some decently bad cost, and I really didn't want to redesign the entire robot at this point. I also made way too many more spares than I actually needed. I had so many more wheels, motors, drums, chassis, and hubs than I actually needed, as at the end of the day, I barely replaced anything besides the motors, only a couple lids that got bent, and the wheels because I just felt bad for not replacing them when I had so many extra. But over to Stomp Bot, who worked pretty well. The only real thing I have to say is I need to give a bit more length on the wires, as that caused some strain. Maybe heat shrink the connections, keep with the slower, more controllable gear ratio, and maybe get a bit more wheel. Anyway, if there's another Ant event that I can make it to, and it's too early to get Blastwave 3 or Stomp 3 done, I have no issues entering this current Stomp Bot. Just get a couple new motors and call it a day, as I think it could have really done well if I just drove a bit better. Either way, thanks for watching. I had a blast at the event, and I just want to thank everyone who helped to put it on. It's so awesome seeing more events pop up in parts of the US that don't have a ton, and I really hope that this event keeps going on, and I definitely plan to make it to the next one. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out the Kilobots videos if you haven't already. Some of Stomp's grudge matches there were pretty awesome. If you're in the mood for something pretty different, I also built a new PC recently for video editing and 3D modeling, and I'm super happy with how the video of that process turned out. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.